Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Plugged in La Porte podcast, brought to you by the La Porte Economic Advancement Partnership. I'm your host, Nate Loucks, here to bring you a closer look at the heartbeat of La Porte. We'll dive deep into the stories, people, and events that shape our beloved city. So in today's episode, we're going to be highlighting the vibrant culture and economy of La Porte, beginning with an exploration of the local arts and entertainment scene. Our guest today is a returning guest, Brett Binversie, the esteemed director of the Civic Auditorium. Brett is here to share with us the latest happenings in downtown La Porte, including the highly anticipated Taco Fest taking place in July. Get ready to savor a variety of flavors as we get a sneak peek of what's to come. But that's not all. We will also be interviewing Bert Cook, the executive director of the La Porte Economic Advancement Partnership, for a discussion on a topic that has been on everyone's mind: the $1 billion Microsoft data center. This groundbreaking project is expected to greatly impact the economy of La Porte, bringing new opportunities and possibilities for our community. Bert will provide insights on what this development means for our city and address some of the burning questions about the project. We're all about keeping you engaged, informed, and plugged into the place we all call home. So buckle up for an episode packed with insights, updates, and a dash of local flavor. Don't forget to share your thoughts, rate us, and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your feedback makes all the difference and helps keep the conversation going. But most importantly, enjoy the ride as we dive into another exciting chapter of La Porte's story on Plugged in La Porte. Let's get started. Once again, we're joined in the studio by a familiar guest who has become a regular voice on our show each month. Brett Binversie, the director of the La Porte Civic Auditorium and City Events, is here to share some exciting insights and inside scoops on what's happening around town. Brett has been instrumental in bringing a slew of engaging and enjoyable events to our community. Welcome back to the show, Brett. We're thrilled to have you here today to discuss these fantastic events and what they mean for our community. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back. It's always exciting to talk about events in the city of La Porte.
Yeah, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because the first thing I want to talk about is I know you don't run, but I think you can inform a little bit of knowledge for us. So I want to discuss the Farmed and Foraged Farmers Market in downtown La Porte, sponsored by The Collective. This market has become kind of a go-to for fresh local produce and goods. I've been there every week that it's been open. It's been fantastic. And it's been so great to see so many people come downtown for this event. Again, I know you're not running this market directly,
Right.
But it's an important weekly event, and
Absolutely.
you are kind of in charge of that and know what's going on in La Porte. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about it for our listeners, when it is, what people can find a little bit.
Sure. Farm and Foraged is held every Sunday, basically from Memorial Day to, I think, mid-September this year, from 11 to 2. Mandy with The Collective has formed actually a nonprofit part of her company. So now she has The Collective that does her like markets and that under The Collective name. And then she has an umbrella or partner business where she specializes in like the local events with the 501c3 for nonprofit status. And Farm and Forage falls under that. She's been instrumental. Her and I believe Becca Tucholsky was a big proponent of this as well. I know from the 1 year I was doing the farmers market of trying to get SNAP benefits instituted down there, which has been done, and through donors that Mandy's been able to secure. I think she's able to triple the SNAP benefits that are downtown, which is just an amazing thing, as you well know from all the work you do with State Street and the PAC Center. Huge things for our community. But this has become, I think, a destination event. Moving it to Sunday was a great move for her. Afternoons seem to work extremely well. They're always busy from what I've seen. I've been down there a lot myself. There's some great, we go and get the Albano's pasta a lot, frozen and to do at home. There's several produce vendors down there that do a great job. There's a musician playing. I forgot the name of the vendor that does the cheese and that, but they're outstanding as well.
I remember.
There's a lot of great things going on down there. She has wonderful seasonal repeat vendors. She has some that just come, every so often. And it's just really put a highlight on our downtown. I would love to talk to Blake down at Bare Bones. I'm sure their businesses went up at brunch on Sundays. They already did a great job anyways, but just the influx of extra people downtown. I know there was once or twice last year when we were down cleaning up things from events that we would stop in for brunch after walking through the market, and there was a long wait at Bare Bones, which we love to see. So, the whole idea of any of these events downtown is not only to have great attendance at the event itself is to get people into our downtown, see our local businesses, see our community. Even on a Sunday, if something's closed, like an Enzo, or I believe Mucho Mas has been closing on Sundays lately. When you go by there and see the business, you still get residual revenue down the road. People will be like, oh, I need to stop back down and check that place out. And it brings in a lot of different people too.
Yeah, I made note of it this week. So if you go down there, you'll always also see like real food vendors as well. So like you can get a lunch or something from there. And they had this pizza place from Knox that was there. And I said, I was just talking to them briefly. I said, how you guys do here? And they said, we always do well when we come to La Porte.
Yep.
And then there was a cake. She makes these like cake in a jar, which
I saw was it the jar? I can't remember the exact name, but
she makes this banana one. I cannot remember. I should be giving her free advertisement. I don't remember. But if you come to the farmers market, you'll see her. But she's there every week. But there's this like banana one. There's just it'll send you to heaven. But I talked to her because she's from Couts, and I said, "You're coming here?" She said, "Yeah, because I do really well at this market." So it's incredible to see how much the farmers market in La Porte has grown, and it's become, like you said, not just a destination for people to come to in our community, but for local vendors. And I consider local not just in the city of La Porte, local in our region, right?
Right.
To want to come here to sell and to be a part of building this project.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things I give her a lot of credit for is it was a risk to move to Sundays, but if you wanted to make this thing grow, you had to get it off of Saturdays.
Yep.
There are so many
markets
that are already, and I always believe, we're La Porte, we can do we can do it as good as anyone else. But at the end of the day, people form habits.
Yep.
And once you're entrenched at a place like the European market in Chesterton, even Valpo's market's grown so much, to get vendors to leave a sure thing, like you were just talking about with the Couts situation and that pizza vendor, to get them to leave something where they know they're going to do well and gamble. And then at those places, you may lose your spot and not be able to get back in. Because I'm sure they have a waiting list to get in at those. And because, there's also such thing as too much, so you monitor those things closely, because if you have too many vendors and they don't make money, you lose them that way as well.
Yeah.
It's a very like chicken crossing the road type situation. So she took a gamble and she did extremely well, and she's pulled it off. And my hat's off to her, because it's a great thing. It's not just great for Mandy and the collective, it's also tremendous for our community. And they do great work with nonprofits here as well at the market. So I'm very proud to have Mandy in our community doing these events.
Now this episode's going to come out, and when is it going to come out, Lindsay? Next Tuesday, all right?
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about the concerts that are coming up for people to get involved in. We've got the Civic concert series, these kind of things that are happening, and you're always bringing in talent, always bringing in
we are trying.
something to do, right? And oftentimes it's a tribute band or something. And if you've not been to one of our tribute band concerts, it is so much fun. They're just a lot of fun. Incredible talent, and these aren't usually tribute bands that come from La Porte County. These are bands that are traveling all over the country or all over the Midwest, and they're getting paid to do this thing because they're so good at it.
Absolutely. Like this past weekend, we just had Super Diamond in, and they came in off the West Coast. They were actually in Chicago playing a special House of Blues corporate event that was closed to the public on Saturday, and they had options of either coming here Friday or Sunday. We already had a local Works in Motion dance company recital booked for Friday and Saturday, so they came in on this past Sunday, and they literally, like everyone there that was a Neil Diamond fan, absolutely loved it. I didn't hear one bad word, and I'm telling you, if you can get, I probably talked to 75 people that night and the next day, and to have not one person complain is pretty rare.
It is.
I think we can all vouch for that between the three of us. So that's a great thing. And this coming, we release on Tuesday. So Friday, June 21st, we're bringing in probably the top Metallica tribute in the country. They're called the Four Horsemen. They've actually switched managers. They're now working with the gentleman that manages Tesla. The actual band, and they're up and coming on a national stage, but they are by far the best of the best for tributes for Metallica, and you're going to get an amazing show on Friday night. We have a group coming in out of Chicago called Louder now that's going to open. Doors are going to open Friday, June 21st at 6 p.m. Louder Now is going to start at 7:15. You're looking at Metallica around 8-ish.
And Louder Now, just for those, because I'd never heard of this one, but this one would be for me, right?
Yes.
It's like emo and pop punk. If you are fans of like AFI or Amberlin or Blink 182, it's these kind of bands.
Yeah, and they said they're gonna tailor it maybe a little closer to the Metallica genre. Yeah. But I mean, I love bringing in these high-powered bands to start because it's great to get the crowd pumped up and like everybody. There's something for everyone. Like even if you're say the popular Metallica, like there's people that love Metallica that know the deep cuts. If you know what I mean.
I only know the stuff that's been on the radio,
right? But I'm like the radio Metallica for the most part. So, it was a little bit during my college years, so I know a little more from my roommates. But I'm like an Enter Sandman type. You know,
exactly.
And who doesn't know that song? I mean, if you're a baseball fan, Mariano Rivera coming into the game, or if you're a football fan, ever watch West Virginia?
Yeah.
When I was telling some friends of mine, when it comes to music and how it's ingrained in our culture, there's two things you need to watch in sports, in my opinion, that will just give you goosebumps. Just talking about it, I get fired up. Is West Virginia when they come out of the tunnel and they're playing Enter Sandman, and with their like dedication to vets and things like that, this is just outstanding. And the other is Wisconsin's jump between the third and fourth quarters. And if you know that, like, there's a whole story on ESPN about how that came about. And during COVID, the following year, the first year, they had fans back in the stadium when they played Notre Dame up at Camp Randall and they played Jump. Like, you could see the stadium shaking. Like, it is just outstanding. But, I mean, just the music tie-in to everyone is so important to me. And the bringing different things to do to the City of La Porte. Like, I hear people all the time, oh, it's another stupid tribute band. Well, no, these guys are dedicated musicians. Like, this isn't like somebody that picked up a guitar and thought, hey, let's play some Metallica and try to make money. These guys are talented musicians, and a lot of these tributes are put together with a purpose. Like, they're like, we're going to make a marketable tribute band that can replicate this sound. I mean, we had Escape come in last year that did Journey. Okay, anybody that knows Journey knows Steve Perry's voice is one of a kind. Mm-hmm. You're not just going to replicate that by accident. You have to search that out, and that's what these bands do. And they live it, they breathe it, and they replicate the movements. Even like the Stevie Nicks Rumors Fleetwood Mac tribute we had in November. They moved like Stevie Nicks while they were singing. They did the costume changes. Catherine McPhee, like they had her look on the keyboard. I mean, it's a great experience when we had Queen Nation. And you were there, Nate, for the Pearl Jam tribute.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're incredible.
It was just outstanding. So we got Metallica on June 21st. June 23rd, we have a rescheduled show from January, and this is for the family. These are the things we're trying to do.
Check these guys out on YouTube because these are a lot of.
I'm telling you,
if I had little kids,
yes.
I would be all about this concert.
Yep, we're excited. Like, we're going to bring our grandkids, and hopefully I'll get to sit with them for a little while. But and one of the great things we did with the show too is we've managed to get a few local businesses to sponsor some tickets that we're going to give out to family advocates into the Youth Service Bureau to give to kids that maybe can't make it to the concert.
Oh, that's fun.
Or can't afford it or what have you, and they just need that time. So instead of the La Porte Civic Auditorium trying to identify these groups, we made the connection. Like, we sought out some businesses. Hey, can you give us a $250 donation? And then we're giving, like, at a discount, extra tickets to the Youth Service Bureau and family advocates to get people in there to see these shows, because that's what we want. Mm-hmm. Like, we price the tickets for this show at up to, $10 to $15 a person. Tables are only like $150 to $175 now, because we just want more people in there to enjoy. But this Little Mermaid group is licensed by the Disney company. They play everything from the songs from Frozen and Aladdin and Little Mermaid and El Canto and stuff like that. It's going to be really entertaining. They also dress the part. They dress up as the genies and
it looks like a whole experience.
It really is. And they sign afterwards. There'll be Disney merch. being sold. We hired some face painters to come in from 1 to 2 to paint faces beforehand. Like, it's a Sunday, June 23rd. The doors open at 1. The show starts at 2. And it's going to be a great family event. Bring your grandparents, bring your kids, bring your parents. Just have a great... And, there's a lot of adults that love the Disney music.
Nothing wrong with
Come and have fun. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Then you've got, in July, you've got Yellow Brick Joel, right?
I'm really interested in that. I actually saw Billy Joel and Elton John in the Hoosier Dome back in like 91, I think it was, or 92. And I love music, and I think that's going to be a great show. They basically do dueling pianos. They have 2 pianos up on stage facing each other. One person's dressed just like Billy Joel in his black and white suit, and the other person's dressed like who knows what with Elton John's gear that day. On the other side, they face each other. They share a band, and they just play all night long. It's like a 2.5-hour show, bouncing back and forth between Billy Joel and Elton John's greatest hits. It's going to be a great time. Tickets are on sale now at laportecivicauditorium.com, or you can come into the office and purchase them and not have to pay the online processing fees. But it's going to be a wonderful event. Tickets are selling quickly for that. We have another one coming up August 16th with Maroon 5. We just announced a Just Like Pink experience on September 6th. We have a few things coming up here shortly that we'll be announcing for October and November.
You guys have a calendar there on the website that you can find all these
Absolutely. I'm one of the ones I'm really excited about is the Rolling Stones tribute that's going to come in November.
Oh, that's going to be a blast.
Rolling Stones, I never got to see them in person, but this is going to be a great show.
Oh, don't worry. Mick Jagger's going to live forever.
Yeah, he might. I don't know who's going to last longer, him or Keith Jones.
Somehow. All right, let's move on to the final part that I want to talk about, because this is very, very important to me as a lover of tacos. The Friday Night Live Taco Fest on July 5th, correct?
Yes.
Explain to our listeners what that is and, why they're going to want to be there.
Well, it grows every year. I keep adding food trucks, and I keep being told after the event that we need more. The lines are long. We're trying to work with that. But this is one of those events where it kind of put things into perspective for me a little bit. Sometime as an event planner working for the City of La Porte and for doing events at the Civic, you get focused just on the event you're doing, and you kind of look at it through a small prism a little bit. And not 2023, but in 2022, I was looking, and we tried getting like Mucho Mas and a couple of the downtown businesses involved in it, and they just didn't have the manpower to get over. So I'm looking over, and I see Ta Corienda, I believe it is, on Lincoln Way there, and they're outside. They have a couple Blackstones set up right outside their building, right across the street from us. And I mean, they're just smoking busy. There's a line from like their building all the way down to Indiana Ave. And I'm looking around ours, and there's all these people there, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, at first I was frustrated. I'm like, man, they should have been over here. They should have been part of this. And then it kind of dawned on me, this is why we're doing these things. Just what I said earlier about Farm and Foraged. We're getting people downtown, and people are doing great things with it. And Ta Corienda identified a way to like take advantage of it, and I don't mean take advantage in a bad way, in a good way. They managed to capitalize without having to like relocate, which I was in food and beverage. I get even going across the street is a lot of work. You got to extra supplies, manpower, setup, all the things that go into doing something like that. So they were able to do it, and they had great sales. Mucho Mas, I remember that night particular. Asian Fusion at the time told me, and that has nothing to do with tacos, but there were so many people downtown, they were like, instead of going to the food trucks, they were going into the local businesses. And they told me they posted one of their best nights ever that night. I don't believe Red Door was quite open yet, but like Blake down at Bare Bones told me the same thing. And I'm like, this is what we're trying to do. Like, people are downtown experiencing Taco Fest, and they're having a great time. And they're also going to Downtown Delights for yogurt afterwards, or they're going over to Ta Corienda, and that's what we want. And the best thing about Taco Fest is just the amount of people that get together and have a wonderful time.
Great.
To me. Like last year, I think we were close, probably between 1,600 and 1,800 people, maybe closer to 2,000. This year, I'm thinking it's going to be even busier. We're trying to draw on some new food trucks. Like we have ones like La Mamacitas that won it a couple of years ago. Their food is outstanding. If nobody's ever had their food. Rico Suave will be there. I think right now I have a list of 10 I'm trying to add a couple more because I've listened to the people and they want more trucks and shorter lines, and that's what we're trying to give them. And then we're also going to try to market, our local downtown, like Mucha Mas and Taco Oriente, and we're going to invite them to be part of the best taco this year. There will be one by judges, and we're going to have a People's Choice Award as well. More information coming out on that. We'll have a DJ we have coming in from South Bend that's done it the last 3 years or 4 years, Johnny Leal, and it's going to be a wonderful time. Downtown Delights is going to be there with their truck as well as their business across the street. So, so many great things with this event.
Obviously, the tacos cost money, but it's free to go, right? So
yeah, just free to go. You have to pay for your food. You have to pay for your drink. And one thing I noticed, too, is that none of these vendors, like all the food trucks, are charging $1 for water, which is amazing. Because when I go to an event at like the Morris or something else like that, or the fair, I'm paying $3 or $4 just for a bottle of water. So, they're not really like gouging anyone. It's just a great time. Come out, have fun, enjoy the outdoors, walk our downtown, enjoy Plaza 618. Just have a wonderful time is what it's about. Be courteous to each other. We ask everyone to always obey the parking laws. And just be prepared because it's going to be off the hook. I can pretty much guarantee it because La Porte loves to have a good time. And I think it's just the 4th of July parade is going to carry right over into July 5th for us.
Yeah, July 5th, 6 to 10 on downtown La Porte, Indiana, for those listening. Anything else before we go, buddy? Anything else you want to talk about?
You know what? I just want to say congrats to Bert Cook and Leap in the City of La Porte and everyone else involved on landing Microsoft. They've raised the bar for us, as we were just discussing before going on air, and I'm excited to see what that brings. It's gonna bring a new perspective, I think, for things. I don't know if any of us quite comprehend just how large of an investment that is in our area. I know we were all so excited at the Arconic expansion. I believe this is like at least 3 times as large.
But now with the confidence that this brings in, now the mayor's going to really
fully
push
aware
to get real Pearl Jam here at the Civic.
Some of us may have to actually have a talk with Bert about not doing his job so well next time.
Well, again, thanks so much for being here. I want to thank you so much for our listeners as well. Participate in these events, get involved, and again, if you have any questions, just go seek out the Civic Auditorium at laportecivicauditorium.com.
Thanks, Nate.
All right, we're shifting our attention to a discussion regarding the economic progress taking place in our community. Our guest is Bert Cook, who serves as the Executive Director of the La Porte Economic Advancement Partnership. Maybe you've heard me call them LEAP before. With a diverse background in economic development positions, including leading initiatives as the Executive Director of the Portage Economic Development Corporation and facilitating growth as the Retention and Expansion Coordinator for the La Porte County Economic Development Alliance, Bert brings a wealth of experience and just knowledge to this discussion. Today, Bert will share insights on several groundbreaking projects that are reshaping the economic landscape of La Porte, from the buzz surrounding the new Microsoft cloud storage facility, which promises to usher in a new era of cutting-edge technology infrastructure, to the exciting developments in the 39 North area that are enhancing our community's living and working environments. We'll also discuss the ongoing commercial and residential space in Newport Landing, which is continuing to develop as we move, which is kind of reimagining former factory spaces for both businesses and residents. So, listeners, I'm glad you're with us as we explore the future of La Porte. I've wanted Bert on the podcast for a couple episodes now. It's good to finally have him here to understand the impact of these significant projects and envision the economic prosperity they're set to bring to our community. It's an enlightening conversation you're not going to want to miss. Let's have this now. Welcome, Bert, to the Plugged In La Porte podcast for the first, but not the final time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nate. I'm obviously happy to be here. Appreciate all you do in running this podcast and all you do for our community. Excited to maybe share a little bit tonight.
So, economic development. Our first episode, I think Craig Phillips tried to talk a little bit about community development versus economic development. Now, you had some thoughts on that, right?
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about how you dissect community development and economic development.
Yeah. So, and I think there is a very important distinction made between the two different focuses. So, community development typically involves a department head or someone who is part of city staff, and economic development, especially in this portion of the country. typically involves an organization that is separate from government. So usually we serve in some sort of a consultant role. The way the organization can be created and structured is different from organization to organization, but you do that for specific reasons, most notably to provide some checks and balances between the project development side and then that execution side, because much of my work and much of the work by any economic development professional occurs on the front end before anything is ever public, before any project has really reached the city itself. And so we work through that front end of the project, and then at some point we transition to the city itself, and that's where community development, that's where engineering and all of the other aspects of running a city get involved, and they take the project from that infancy stage to the ultimate execution, which occurs through the construction of some new, business.
Yeah, so for our listeners, to kind of give you an illustration, a few years back, Bert, you remember this, I'm sure, a dear friend of mine who is an executive at Patrick Industries contacted me and said, hey, do you know of anybody at the City of La Porte that I can talk to? I didn't contact him to marry. It was you, right? Because you're always going to be the first point of, because whether or not a project will work, whether or not it even makes sense, whether or not there's land, you're going to have the answers to that, right?
Yes, you don't see that, Nate, but we'll work on 250 projects over the course of a year, and in some years only 3, 4, 5 of those projects will actually come to fruition. So there is a ton of work that goes into the front determination, or the work that goes into determining whether or not a project fits in our community. So in your example with Patrick Industries, we spent a great deal of time with them talking about, what does the right location look like? What's the right building? What's the right area of the city do you want to be in? Do we have the utility infrastructure to serve that site? How does this interplay with other locations that company might have? And there's weeks and weeks of work that go into that piece of it. And then once you've identified that location, then it's a question of, can you get a building built? Or if the building exists, are you able to negotiate a lease that makes sense for both parties? We start to talk about incentives and how the city might be able to assist or offset some of the costs that are ultimately associated with a project. And there's a variety of other things that go hand in hand with that. Each project's a little different, especially when you've got new construction versus something that's existing. But we work through all of that front end of the project before it transitions over to a Craig Phillips or our engineering department.
So tell me, how much have you had to learn about patience as the economic development director?
Yeah, if you don't have patience, I would suggest you don't get into this line of work, because it is really difficult. Oftentimes, you see a project when it begins to when it becomes public. You're talking the better part of a year in most
cases.
Sometimes
even longer.
Absolutely, it can be more as well. So, patience is a virtue in that regard, and you have to learn to deal with the project timeline, which is different for every company, and we need to be supportive of that and work through their timeline, not our own.
Can we talk a little bit for our listeners, because I think people don't realize the timelines of a lot of the typical timeline. So let's say a company comes to you, they say, we want to do something in La Porte, or maybe a developer says, I want to build a business here, I want to bring a restaurant here, I want to do they're going to come to you guys, right?
Yep.
The timeline for that, and what are the steps to do that, right? Let's say let's use Newport Landing as an example, okay?
Sure.
They want to get a plot in Newport Landing. Mm-hmm. What's the timeline? What is the approach for that?
Yeah, so in your example where we're talking something commercial, yep. There's a whole lot of work that goes into the front end even before I've identified Newport Landing. So oftentimes we're going to talk through demographics of what exists in our community. Would this be a good fit from both sides, from the city's perspective, but then also from that particular company's perspective. And then after we've narrowed down a location, right, we start to work and get specific to that. But up until then, we've done a lot online, virtually nowadays, but we've looked at things online. We've obviously had a number of meetings before we ever get to the site.
Yeah, and there's no contract signed. There's no nothing, right?
Absolutely nothing. It's all hypothetical at that point. Then eventually we hone in on the location. That's when we'll do the site tours. We'll bring them into our community to actually experience the site itself, but also what else
And that could be weeks or months in all of that process, right?
Almost,
there, right?
almost always. It's at least that much.
Yeah.
So then once we were there, now we've been on the site and we've determined that this is a good fit. We start to talk about, in this case, that's new construction that would have to occur. So we have to talk through what that process looks like, and can you build the building that you want, and do you have the ability to get a site of the size you're looking for.
For instance, in Newport Landing, there's design standards, right? So
Absolutely.
It's going to have to meet the design standards, these kind of things, right?
Absolutely. And Newport Landing is a very specific area. It's a brownfield, a remediated brownfield. So that company has to understand what comes with that, because there are restrictions and things that come with that. But that's all, determining whether or not this is even an ideal location. But let's assume that we've went through all of that and now they're settled. This is where we want to be. Then we have to negotiate a deal, right? They have to either buy or lease something, and we have to work through the specifics of what that might look like. And that's going to involve an interplay between the company and somebody, in this case, the Redevelopment Commission. I don't make that decision myself. Rather, I bring that in front of the Redevelopment Commission and allow them to decide whether or not this is a good fit. That's the role that we play. The most notable role that we play in this process is the intermediary between the potential business and the body of the city that ultimately has decision-making capabilities.
And by the time you go to the RDC, you've known these developers or this person that wants to be oftentimes for months at this point, right?
Absolutely, months for sure. And have developed a relationship, making sure that we're both comfortable with who we're partnering with. And so then we go to the RDC and we say, we've got so-and-so that wants to buy this piece of land, and here's what they would potentially build. And usually, as we work on a contract, there's going to be contingencies built into that agreement that say if we can get incentives, or if we can get the support we need, if we can get entitlements and get through the permitting process, receive the utilities that we need, all of these different contingencies are at play, protecting the company, but oftentimes also protecting the city. And as we work through those contingencies, now we start to get to a place where you've got a real project. You've got something that the probability says we're likely going to see built. But that's so late in the process, right? That's where we're getting to the 10-month, 8, 9, 10-month period. And that's why I will hear one piece of feedback that is often shared with us, and I know it's a frustration for our community, but all communities, is, well, we heard about Meijer, who was going to buy all of this land in Newport Landing, and then they never got built. Or we heard about Kroger, who was going to build a new marketplace, but it never got built. Indiana's statutes are very clear about how we go through these processes, and going in front of a public body to start this, as we referenced with the Redevelopment Commission, we don't necessarily have the ability to shield any of that. We have to bring that forward in this particular manner. And so when we do that, the public hears about it, right? They hear Meijer, the name Meijer, and I think people get excited about that. The risk absolutely. The risk we run, and where the friction will come into the equation, is I'm referencing we're very early on in that process still, and there are many things that could change or could go wrong that restrict that project from occurring. Let's use the Meijer example. That company, they obviously put the property under contract and had intended to build a store.
So our listeners might not know this. Meijer was interested in all of that area.
I don't know exactly what year, but we're probably talking about 2013, 2014, something like that. But they put the property under contract and were intending to build a store. And as we work through that contingency process, they recognized or realized that if they build a store here in La Porte, that likely they're going to just be cannibalizing sales from other locations, most notably Michigan City. So once their analysis was complete, it no longer made sense for them to build here.
Because they won't get new customers. It's just going to divide their customer base between both of those locations.
That's exactly right. And so at that point, they came back to the city and said, well, we appreciate this, but ultimately we're not going to be able to get to the finish line, meaning we're not going to get to close and build this new store because it doesn't make sense for us. And so that deal goes away. And I think sometimes people in the public will say, well, you misled us or you lied to us. I think what you have to understand is we're very restricted in how we go through this process, and there are certain things we have to release publicly. And when we release those, it's so early on the process that problems can still occur. And just because you hear so-and-so is interested in this, or so-and-so is putting this property under contract, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see that built on the site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was listening to a podcast a while ago. It was about economic development, but essentially these large multinational companies, or Kroger, for example, might decide they're building 10 new Krogers, but they have a team that's exploring 40 sites, right? And so, and so, just because they have a team exploring every site doesn't mean that they plan on developing all 40 sites, right?
Absolutely.
They're gonna figure out what the incentives are. They're gonna figure out what makes sense, but they're gonna have a wide reach and then narrow it down as they go. And that's hard, right? Because
it is.
It's
very difficult. And you hit it the nail on the head, Nate, when you suggest. So incentives play a part in this process, right? There are other factors as well, but they definitely play a part in the process. And you will hear people say, well, why do you use tax abatement, or why do you use these incentives? First of all, the incentives in the state of Indiana are very, very limited. Our state has consciously made the decision to be a low-cost community. And so we make the cost of doing business as low as possible. But with that comes our toolbox, which is much smaller than you might see in Illinois, let's say. So we have very limited tools to work with from the start. If you do not believe that every community is using these tools to attract development, then you are not in this industry, right? It's the first thing that everyone will tell. It is the ultra competitive. Every community wants many of the same things, right? You hear it everywhere. We want high-tech, high-paying jobs. We want commercial development. We want residential development. So every community is competing for that type of development. And so you have to use the tools that ultimately are given to us. But again, in your example, these companies are very smart, and they're doing exactly what they should be, which is looking at multiple options and comparing the costs and benefits associated with each. And if they can find a better deal in the community next door, then in many cases they will take that deal, just like we would, right? Just like when we go to buy a car or some other goods, we look for sales, or we look for the best deal for us individually. Companies are doing much the same thing, looking for the best deal for their organization.
Let's talk a little bit about, and I have a feeling that our producer here, Lindsay, is going to tell us we got to be done before we're ready to be done. But here's the thing: is you sponsor the podcast, so we'll go as long as we want. So let's talk a little bit about, since we're already in Newport Landing, we've got our listeners thinking about Newport Landing. There's a new building going up there right now. Have they announced that or not? Or can you talk about it?
Yeah, we can share. So you've got along North Madison, which is the road there. You've got 3 new developments that are all basically starting at the same time. The one that's furthest along is Anytime Fitness. Ferris Musula is the owner of that business.
Moving out of the Kroger.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. And they'll be there. I think the building looks great. They'll also have a space for a restaurant there. I don't think they have a tenant lined up yet, but we're working with them to find the right opportunity.
Looks like
that.
The size of a Five Guys type of restaurant.
Correct.
I mean, obviously that's not the one. Don't listen to me here. But something maybe like of that.
Correct.
Right?
It won't be, we've got some restrictions on fast food in that area, but, fast casual is something that fits really well. So I think you're
fast
spot
casual
on.
For our listeners that might not know is the Chipotles, the Five Guys, the Paneras, that kind of stuff.
You got it. Yep. So you have that being built, and they're well into their construction process. Right next door, you would have just this week seen the foundation being poured for a medical office building. So it'll be a dentist's office. That'll start. Well, that started construction, but that'll continue over the course of this summer.
Is that the dentist that isn't from the community that's moving down here specifically to be a part of the community?
Correct.
It's a pretty amazing thing, right?
Absolutely, and it fits really well as you look at that development as a whole. We're trying to provide options for people where, like, let's say someone that lives at the banks can find all of their needs, closely met in that development. So I think that fits really well. And then we also are very close to a financial deal with a financial institution that would potentially be the last parcel along North
Madison right there.
Correct. So those would be 3 developments that we hope to see all under construction here this summer. And then we are actively working with a developer to build out behind that, or to the north and the east.
There's that one road that goes now in between, right?
Correct. Yes. There's about a 10-acre parcel that remains, and we're working with a developer who is intending to build a retail center with multiple retailers that would potentially locate on the property and would fit well with what else already exists there.
So Newport Landing is, very well could if this developer comes, and again, it's it's always a lot of ifs and buts, right?
Mhm.
Because there's so many different things that have to happen. But if this does, Newport Landing could be getting developed. All of that area there, that center parcel, could almost be done within a year or so.
Correct. Yeah, and again, we have to work through the
We talk about
aspects,
coulds, ifs, and buts, right?
But from a contractual standpoint, yes, we're theoretically, at least from a verbal standpoint, under contract on all of the property available in that area. We also have as we move kind of back towards the Dunes Event Center, we've got a family fun center that is intending to build there. That's been talked about for a couple of years now.
But it's still in the progress.
Yeah, we're
right?
very excited about it. It's a big project. Local developers there, so they're working through all of the details that they need to make sure that they're going to build the right application, on budget, and that it'll work well with everything else in the area. So we'll continue down that path with them, and I'm excited about that as well.
It's important for our listeners to know, though, because I saw something online about this. Well, this isn't happening. Well, it doesn't actually mean it's not happening. Actually, that parcel's still hopefully getting developed in the way that it was supposed to, right?
Yeah, and they're doing all the additional time. They're doing all the things we would hope, most notably being a complete market study, making sure that the applications that they're placing in that facility are what is needed and wanted in our community, that can be supported by our community. Because the last thing we want to see is a development occur of that size and then not work, right? You want to make sure that what we're building ultimately will be successful long term.
Let's talk a little bit about the big announcement, right? So this has been, and I've got a question about this. This is a little personal, but so Microsoft, right?
Yep.
You can talk about the details of this project. You can talk about the scope of it, but I want to know from an economic development director. Oftentimes when things are bought, property is bought, it's bought under a different name.
Correct.
Were you surprised that they bought it under Microsoft's name?
Completely shocked. We fully expected, a real estate holding company, and they're usually these generic names to kind of protect the anonymity of the project. So absolutely shocked by that.
Because that information just got out then, right?
Correct. It was released publicly on our GIS system almost immediately, and obviously spurred a lot of questions and a lot of hypothesizing of what was going there.
So let's talk about the project.
Yeah.
What is this project?
Yeah, Nate, there are moments in time where I think all you can do is recognize that something is occurring that just is outside of the norm and has the potential to be truly transformational and to significantly change our community for the better moving forward. And this is one of those moments. I would tell you that Microsoft has been the best company I've ever worked with. In so many different regards, but most notably the way that the respect they have for our community and their desire to make sure that we are successful along with their development. It's been just a huge breath of fresh air, and they've truly been a partner throughout the process. So I would start there, but to help our listeners kind of understand, we're talking about $1 billion investment.
It's a B.
A B, right, in the city of La Porte. Our assessed value in the city right now last year was $842 million. So you just get an idea of the scope or the size.
Everything we have.
Yeah, to a certain extent. It is very personal property intensive, and so that is depreciated in order to get to assessed value, but it is a very sizable investment in our community. It'll create 200 jobs, high-paying jobs, high-tech jobs that we obviously recognize.
But some or many over 6 digits, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this will all be built on approximately 500 acres at the southern border of the city of La Porte. And I want to give a huge thanks to the Barr family, Harold and Sue Barr, and Larry and Susan Yazel. Their families were part of the team that chose to sell land for this development. Absent that, doesn't happen here, right? It happens in another community. You got to have the land in order to be able to complete developments like this. So we appreciate their support, especially Harold and Sue, because I think they saw the vision a few years back. So they petitioned the city to be annexed in the hopes that it would lead to a project like this. And it's always nice when you have good people to be able to see that work the way that we had hoped it would. But yeah, we're excited, and it's the type of development I think every community is competing for, right? It's of the It creates momentum.
What are they going to do or make?
So we use the word data center, and oftentimes, we think of everything as so much cloud storage now. By no means am I technical enough to really get into the details, but I can tell you the fact that everything is stored in the cloud now requires servers and all of this support in order to be able to do so. So that will be the type of development. It is incredibly low impact when we look at, if you look at a data center versus a steel manufacturing or steel manipulation or some other type of manufacturing. This is so much less intensive, which means it fits well in that area. And it is a heavy electrical user, which is great for NIPSCO. I know they will appreciate that. But that is also a piece that makes us attractive, is that we have the utility infrastructure available to be able to serve a development like this.
So for our listeners that might not know this, as Bert said, cloud storage, 3 companies control almost all of our cloud storage, right? So, and cloud storage is not just where you put your pictures, not just Google Drive, not just all of our businesses. Most of our softwares are now even run on the cloud, right? Yep. And so Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, those are the 3 large cloud. And they're growing because, again, computer-based data is going to be, or cloud-based data is going to just grow and grow and grow. So is there potential to even grow more here in this kind of tech sector field?
Well, I think the project itself creates momentum, right? It puts you on the map. You talk about, and this isn't specific to this one, but any large development like this, I think, draws attention, good attention, in the sense that this enormous company has determined this location as one that they can be successful. Others will do the same. So without a doubt, it creates momentum, and it likely will lead to other types of development. I think as you look at our region as a whole, you're seeing a lot of this type of development right now.
Getting Amazon.
Correct, yeah. So I would think it all lends itself. I'm by no means, again, an expert in this particular industry, but I would say this lends itself to continued development like this. In our area. And what that means exactly, I can't tell you at this point, but I do think we're positioning ourselves to be successful long term.
Yeah, I was in a meeting years ago, but there was something about one of the fastest internet lines in the country comes right through La Porte, correct? Mm-hmm. Or right on the toll road, right?
Yeah, we have two. We have fiber that runs through the toll road, and then also through the
Which, from what I understand, is these major companies that need a lot of data notice those lines, right? Yep. Because, and so it makes the Nuclear Isles, the La Portes, more interesting than you might think.
Yeah,
our listeners
absolutely.
might not think because of all of that. So what's the timeline for Microsoft then?
Yeah, so they're in the planning phase. So that some of that is outside of everyone's control. We'll have to go through the typical process that we referenced earlier in our discussion of entitlements and permitting and all of these different things. And I think that'll play out as we move through this year, and then we'll kind of see where we're at. But I think our community will see this project built in the near future. This isn't a long range type project. It will occur in a shorter time frame, but can't necessarily nail that down just yet.
And these are good for construction jobs too. So that's a lot of wins there.
I know our trades are very, very excited by this development and the potential that has.
All right, let's go on to 39 North. It's nice to not have to talk about whether or not it should be annexed or not. It's annexed. And now I assume, I don't know this, but I assume infrastructure work is happening. But can you get economic development announcements without the infrastructure?
Yeah, so the utility infrastructure is obviously the key, right? There's so much that development. I'd give the 39 North Conservancy District a lot of credit because when it was built 25 plus years ago, I think it served its purpose, and they have seen growth in that area. In fact, they sort of outgrew the utility availability that they had there. And that has been the barrier over in recent years, is you just don't have that water service that you need in order to see, specifically manufacturing development, residential as well, but manufacturing development. So the annexation is complete, as you referenced. The next step in this process is the acquisition of the Conservancy District assets. So think water pipes, wastewater pipes. And we're still working through the details on that. I know the city team and the 39 North Conservancy District team are working hand in hand to iron out those last few details. We can't really do much until that piece of it is completed. The city, though, has been actively working on that infrastructure plan. I mean, it's a sizable investment, $13+ million that the city is going to invest into the ground there, and that's the water infrastructure that is necessary to properly serve that area. So we've done the steps that we can on the front end preparing for that. And once this acquisition of the assets is completed, I think the next step will be beginning the process of financing those infrastructure improvements.
So hopefully within the year, maybe get some announcements or some stuff happening out there.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that we'd love to have that done in the next 60 days because I know those residents and businesses out there are eager for us to get started. There are also a couple projects that are waiting in the wings.
So you have developers or companies interested in wanting to go there already?
Correct. Yeah, we have two companies in particular that have already been through the site review process with the city and are ready to build pending these infrastructure improvements.
Well, we got to wrap up here in a sec, but any other announcements, any other things that you want to talk about that's happening in our city that maybe our listeners might be interested in as it pertains to either economic or residential development that you think is important?
Yeah, the only other thing that I might mention, we could have mentioned it earlier, Nate, when we were talking, but I'll do it now, is just referencing the fact that you'll hear from us often about, and I think I might have done it in this podcast, but the confidentiality, not being able to share a name of a particular company, that's never done to keep anyone out of the loop or to be vague, intentionally vague. It's usually due to some sort of non-disclosure agreement or respecting the confidentiality of some company who may be making a decision that will greatly impact their workforce or others. And so that's part of our of the requirements on us to be a good partner to companies that are considering moving here. And I just want to make sure that our listeners and the general public kind of knows that we like to share that information as soon as we possibly can, but in some instances we're not able to do that, and we like to get the info out as quick as we can. But we are going to ultimately respect the wishes of that company. They get to determine when,
and it's their announcement to make, right?
It is.
So that's the hard thing. Obviously, I know there's a local mayor of the City of La Porte that loves a good announcement.
I do not know who you're referring to, Nate.
But that is the hard thing, right?
Yes.
They get to make the announcement. Yes. And so, but I appreciate all that you guys do. And I think a lot of it is misunderstood. A lot of it's just the timeline, the patience, the getting used to know sometimes, right? Because you've worked this project for months and months and months. You've gotten to know these developers, and they're in between 3 sites, and they decide one of the other 3. Doesn't mean that La Porte wasn't a good site. It just meant that this one was better. So it's a lot of work, but you guys do a lot of it on a small team, and you get a lot done.
No, I appreciate that, and we get disappointed just like anyone else, and you are exactly right. Sometimes the deals that we think are meant for La Porte are just unfortunately using us to maybe leverage a better offer out of the community that they're currently operating in. We don't get to know that up front, so we have to treat every project like it's real. But we do the best that we can with the information that we have, and appreciate the compliment. We do have a great team of people that I get to work with day in and day out. And Lindsay and Eric and Mike are a wonderful group, and really appreciate all their work. They make it the job fun to do, and we're very, very touched to be able to do this job for the City of La Porte.
All right, final question for you. Eric has been on the podcast. Lindsay, obviously, is the producer extraordinaire. You've not been on the podcast. Should we ever invite Mike Riley?
I think the easy answer to that, you gave a time limit earlier, and I think if you have Mike on, that time limit is going to be blown out the window, so I'd be careful there.
Thanks so much again for being on the podcast, and thanks so much to our listeners.
Thanks, Nate.
And that wraps up another engaging episode of the Plugged in La Porte podcast. A huge thank you to our guests today, Brett Binversie, the director of the Civic Auditorium in La Porte, and Bert Cook, the executive director of the La Porte Economic Advancement Partnership. Your insights and updates truly shine a light on the vibrant pulse of our city. I also want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our incredible producer, Lindsay Johnkind, who works tirelessly behind the scenes to bring this show to life each and every month. Lindsay, your dedication does not go unnoticed. And of course, to our subscribers and listeners, your support is the heartbeat of this podcast. Whether you're tuning in from La Porte or from nearby areas, your engagement is what makes this endeavor so rewarding. And it's a pleasure to bring you closer to the people and events that shape our community. And we're excited to continue this journey together. If you liked what you heard today and want to hear more, make sure to share this episode with your friends and family. The more we spread the word, the more we can keep our community connected and informed. And don't forget to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us grow and improve, ensuring we bring you the content you care most about. Until next time, stay plugged into the heartbeat of La Porte. My name's Nate Loucks. We'll be back soon with more stories, interviews, and updates that matter to you. Have a great day.